So in the last episode, we talked about the CSS box model and how the boxes overlapped each other with padding, alignment, margin, and floating. And now we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the CSS box model, as well as how it might relate to text. But then, as far as the CSS box model, if we kind of reset our position to relative, which I just did, and you can see it's all clean. There's no position absolute on this main div, and then I made sure everything else was clean. So we just had float left for all of these divs. So it should all align floating left if my browser is large enough to do that, and it does. So if that's the case, what we can do is from there we just want to talk about understanding the CSS model a little bit better, the difference between width and the height. And you can see the width and the height is, the width is 250 pixels and the height is 100 pixels. But the width actually includes, for this div, it includes the content, the padding, and the border. So the width of the actual box, then the padding, and then the border. So it would be border left, padding left, the content, the padding right, and the border right. And the height would be the border top, the padding top, the content, the height, that is, the height of the document, the padding bottom, and the border bottom. So if that's the case for all these divs, the actual width and height of these divs are a lot wider and taller than 100. So this blue one would actually be 250 of a width plus padding, which is 15 and 15, that's 30, because padding left and padding right, so that's 230. And then including the border, which is 510 pixels, because border left and border right would be the total, because you had 250 plus 10 plus 30. You get the idea that you have to double that up in order to get the actual dimensions of the width of this div or the height of this div. Same thing with the others. So that's really important. The other important aspect is to understand positioning. We can set divs or elements on to display in a row, and what you would call that is inline. So like it would all be on this one row, would be inline. If you wanted it to be displayed on separate lines, we call it a display block. That's the value we'd give the display property. So examples of elements that are automatically block elements are paragraph and div, and elements that are inline would be a span style. So the span can be put inside this paragraph and it won't give you another line. That's the case with paragraphs or another div. It gives you this block of space. But then in regard to positioning, you also have another element called absolute and relative. Absolute is a value. It allows the exact location of the element area in relation to its parent. So whatever that parent is, in this case, our parent is the body. So it would actually be up here at the border of this document. If we had a div, an external div, and then a nested div, the nested div's parent would be the external div. So if you need to consider that when you're setting position relative and position absolute. Position relative is the standard original format. So you have to clarify position absolute. Position relative is the original format. So when you specify that as absolute, you're going to see something very different. Position absolute. If I create this for the div, then all of them are going to be positioned because they're all their parent elements is the same element. It's the body. So you can see they're all positioned where it's up here with the margin being the same. Now, you can also clarify the position, if it's absolute, relative to the parent element. So what we can do with that is you can clarify top, left, bottom, or right as far as the position. So if we do top and left for this A1 selector, we can take top and say it's 25 pixels from the top left, from the top point. So that'll be that's the height, and then it'll be, let's say it's 55 pixels from the left. If we did that with A1, then you can see how it's moved. It's still behind everything, but I can create that same top and left change and then give each one a little bit of a different specification so you can see the difference and where it's located on the top and the left. So now I've specified a unique absolute position for each piece. And you can see how they're all positioned differently now. There's another aspect. If I want to stack these pieces, I could use what's called a z-index. And z-index, it's like the third dimension. You have y and x as the first and second dimensions, or second and first dimensions, and the z-index would be considered the third dimension. The higher the number, the closer that's stacked to you. So if I have 4 documents here and I want to stack all of them, I would give the ones I want closest to me a 4, and the ones I want further away lower numbers. So I have it set to where these should flip, and they do, 1 and 3, so now I want those up closer. And in the case that the div A1 was on top of A2, 3, or 4, it would still be in the front. So I could move div 3 down to 15 from top, and you can see how it'll be behind. It'll be behind both A2 and A1. So you can see how that works. If you want to specify a piece, an item that's in front of another piece and still hidden, you can do that. So the final aspect that I think is valuable is overflow. So if I'm looking at my text document, what I did is I took what used to be divs and I just created a paragraph tag instead of a div so that I could put my text inside the paragraph. So I just changed the actual div to a paragraph. So now I have paragraph ID A1 and then paragraph instead of all the div tags and the styles. So now instead I've got my z-index set for a couple paragraphs, which would be the A3 and A4. I could just create my z-index for 1 and 2 if I wanted to. But then we have this overflow with 3 value options, which is hidden, visible, and scroll. The overflow visible is the automatic setting, so you can see the text comes all the way outside of this box and is made visible constantly. And then the overflow hidden. And when I have overflow hidden, you can see it's now hidden inside this box, underneath the box, so you can't see it. So if I do that for the orange background, overflow hidden, it looks a lot more clean. Let's just make it overflow hidden for all of these pieces. Now you can see how they're all inside the box. They cover it up so you can't see it. But then overflow scroll I could do that, and you could scroll and see all the text inside of the overflow. So you can see there's lots of options for manipulating text in the future. I'd like you to just go around and play with each one of those a little bit so you can get comfortable with it. And that's the end.